Welcome to another episode of PPL Pod. You know, usually when you look at a person's life, you can, trace a somewhat logical line from who they were as a kid to who they become as an adult.
Right, like you can see the foundation they built on.
Exactly, you see the foundation. But then you stumble across a story with a contrast so stark. It's honestly almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, picture this. A straight-A Catholic school spelling bee champion.
Okay.
A dedicated Girl Scout who actually spent a chunk of her childhood standing in a recording booth voicing Sally Brown in the Peanuts cartoons.
Which is, it's the absolute quintessential image of 1980s American innocence.
Right.
It paints this picture of a kid who is highly disciplined, deeply eager to please, and, operating perfectly within the strict lines drawn by the adults around her.
So take that image of the perfect rule-following kid and try to square it with the fierce, barrier-breaking hip-hop and pop royalty who just completely dominated the 2000s. We're talking about an artist who pumped out club anthems with lyrics that, let's be honest, you probably still know every single word to if you grew up in that era.
Oh, absolutely. Trying to reconcile the spelling bee champion with the woman singing London Bridge sounds like you're describing two completely different human beings.
But we are talking about the exact same person. In this deep dive, we are taking you on a masterclass in resilience and reinvention. We are looking at the life, the psychological struggles, and the massive cultural impact of Stacey Ann Ferguson, or as you almost certainly know her, Fergie.
Yeah, and this deep dive goes way beyond a simple nostalgia trip, I think. We were looking at an artist who sold over 27.5 million records in the U.S. alone, 8 Grammy Awards.
Insane numbers.
Right, but the journey to get those accolades is this really wild ride through the suffocating pressures of child stardom, the profound darkness of severe addiction, and the brutal, unforgiving machinery of the music industry.
Well, when you look at her whole trajectory, you realize she is essentially a musical chameleon.
Oh, totally.
She has this uncanny ability to constantly adapt her colors to survive her environment, whether that meant, acting on a soundstage as a kid, belting out massive pop ballads, or delivering these really aggressive, iconic hip-hop verses.
Yeah, but to understand her eventual rebellion and the really dark struggles she faced later, we have to look at the environment she was trying to adapt to first.
Let's set the scene right. It's 1975 in Hacienda Heights, California.
Yeah, a suburb of Los Angeles. She was raised Roman Catholic, and she was the ultimate, almost stereotypical overachiever. You mentioned she was a cheerleader, a Girl Scout, a straight-A student.
Checking literally every box.
Every single box of childhood perfection. And she entered show business incredibly early. She studied dance, she did those Peanuts voiceovers you mentioned, but her biggest early break was a television show called Kids Incorporated.
Oh man, Kids Incorporated. She was on it from, 1984 to 1989?
Exactly, making her the longest-running cast member on the show.
So, from the time she was 9 until she was 14, she's a working professional in Hollywood. Which, I have to ask, looking at how often we see this pattern with child stars, was this hyper-successful, straight-A childhood essentially a pressure cooker without a release valve?
The short answer is yes.
Right.
But the mechanism behind why that happens is what you really need to understand to make sense of Fergie's story. The rigorous demands of child acting aren't just about memorizing lines.
What else is it then?
Well, it's about hitting your physical marks on a stage, dealing with hot lighting, and being surrounded by adults who expect you to exhibit adult-level professionalism.
Right, like you're an employee, not a kid.
Exactly. It forces a child to suppress their natural emotional development.
Because you basically aren't allowed to have a bad day when there's a production budget on the line.
Precisely. If you feel sad or angry or overwhelmed, you learn very early on to pack away your actual feelings and present whatever emotion the director asks for. You are rewarded financially and with praise for hiding your true self.
Wow, that is heavy.
It is. That kind of emotional suppression is a direct precursor to the darker years Fergie would face. She didn't have the tools to process complex adult emotions because she spent her childhood playing a part written by someone else.
So she just spent years performing perfection. And that leads us to the early 90s, moving from that highly structured childhood television success into the adult music industry proved to be, frankly, an incredibly jarring transition for her.
Yeah, so she formed a girl group called Wild Orchid with her former Kids Incorporated co-star Renee Sandstrom and another singer, Stephanie Radell.
And they actually got some traction early on, right? They signed a major deal with RCA Records in 1994.
They did. They released their debut album in 1997, and it had some mild success. They even got to open for Cher and Cyndi Lauper.
which sounds amazing on paper. But then the reality of the late 90s music machine kicks in. Their 1998 sophomore album, Oxygen, was a huge commercial failure. It only sold about 200,000 copies globally.
Which back then was basically nothing.
Yeah, and as a result, their record label just outright refused to release their third album.
Yeah.
Stacey has been a success machine since she was 9, and suddenly she hits a massive brick wall.
Because the music industry back then was completely ruthless. If you didn't hit massive numbers, you were considered dead weight. And on top of that, she was incredibly frustrated by the band's manufactured image.
Right, back in the corset of expectations.
Exactly. So when you combine a stalled career with all those suppressed emotions from her childhood that we just talked about, it creates a dangerous vulnerability.
Yeah.
That is when she developed a severe crystal meth addiction.
Okay, let's unpack this. I look at that addiction as a false escape hatch. It's a textbook case of a pendulum swinging in the complete opposite direction.
For sure.
She went from total micromanaged control, where adults told her where to stand and what to sing, to a total chaotic loss of control. It was this highly destructive way to reclaim some sort of agency over her life.
It was. She eventually left Wild Orchid in 2001, and she famously described crystal meth as, quote, the hardest boyfriend I ever had to break up with.
God, that phrasing is chilling.
It really is.
But the incredible part is she actually did break up with it. And the sources point out that she overcame the addiction using, of all things, hypnotherapy. How does that even work in the context of drug recovery?
I know it sounds a bit unconventional, but the underlying psychology makes perfect sense for her specific situation.
How so?
Hypnotherapy works by inducing a deeply relaxed state, like a trance, that allows you to bypass the critical, anxious part of your conscious mind.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, for someone like Fergie, whose conscious mind had been hypermanaged and stressed since she was literally a child, bypassing that anxiety was crucial. It allows a therapist to speak directly to the subconscious, helping to rewrite the internal narrative of control and self-worth without the patient's defensive walls getting in the way.
Wow, so she really did the grueling internal work to reprogram how she handled stress.
She did.
Which leaves her, in 2001, as basically a blank slate. She's broken free from the addiction, she's broken free from the manufactured girl group, and that blank slate puts her in the exact right place at the exact right time to completely redefine an entirely different music group.
We are officially entering the Black Eyed Peas era.
Yes, it's 2002. The Black Eyed Peas are working on their third album, Elefunk. Up until this point, they were a respected underground hip-hop group. They had what critics called backpack rapper cred.
Right. Very different vibe from what they became.
Very different. But an A&R coordinator named Dante Santiago invites Fergie to try out for a vocal part on a song called Shut Up. Wait, actually, I want to stop here for a second, because we hear that term tossed around in music documentaries all the time.
A&R.
Yeah. For those of us who don't work at a record label, what exactly does an A&R coordinator do? Are they just talent scouts?
That's a great question, actually, because A&R, which stands for Artists and Repertoire, is much more than just talent scouting. Think of them as the bridge between the record label's money and the artist's creative direction.
Okay, makes sense.
They are actively involved in shaping the sound of an album. They find producers, they suggest collaborations, and in this case, Dante Santiago heard a missing piece in the Black Eyed Peas' sound and realized Fergie's voice was the exact texture they needed to cross over into the mainstream.
And the chemistry was instantaneous. I mean, she bonds immediately at the will.i.am. She records 5 more songs for the album, and then Jimmy Iovine, the legendary chairman of Interscope Records, officially offers her a permanent spot in the group.
The aesthetic shift that followed was unprecedented. The group essentially abandoned their underground hip-hop roots and pivoted to this highly polished, futuristic pop rap sound.
And Fergie was the catalyst for that.
Exactly. She brought this explosive pop energy to a hip-hop trio, fundamentally altering their DNA.
And the results were just monumental. Where Is the Love drops and becomes their first major global hit.
It's a huge track.
Massive. And then a bit later, we get My Humps. Now, My Humps reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was playing everywhere, malls, clubs, car radios. You couldn't escape it.
You really couldn't.
But it was absolutely mocked by music critics. All Music literally called it one of the most embarrassing rap performances of the new millennium. I remember when that song came out, and critics completely tore it apart. Is that just snobbery? Or did they miss something fundamental about pop music?
Well, I think it highlights a massive divide between what critics analyze and what humans actually enjoy.
That's very true.
Critics are trained to look for lyrical poetry, deep thematic resonance, and sonic innovation. So when they heard the repetitive, sexually suggestive lyrics of My Humps, they dismissed it as shallow. But the general public,
They just want to dance.
they are looking for a visceral reaction. They want a groove and attitude, something that makes them feel confident. Fergie understood that inherently. She was
Yeah.
giving people a vibe.
And by 2009, with their album The E&D, that vibe made them unstoppable. I mean, Boom Boom Pow and I Got a Feeling kept the Black Eyed Peas at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for an unprecedented 26 consecutive weeks.
That is half a year of pure chart domination. It is wild.
They cracked the code of global pop, and Fergie's voice was the driving engine behind those hooks. But her success with the group wasn't just about elevating the Black Eyed Peas.
No, not at all.
It created the ultimate launch pad for her own distinct voice and brand. Because in 2006, she releases her solo debut album, The Duchess. And what blows my mind is that the songs on this album were recorded over a 7-year period.
Yeah, she was slowly chipping away at her solo identity while simultaneously grinding away on global tours with the Peas.
It was exhausting just to think about.
Totally. The album was executive produced by Will.i.am, and it was deeply personal. He described the recording process as her casting out her demons, singing about her struggles with addiction and stepping firmly into her own power.
And the commercial performance was historic. She became the first singer since Milli Vanilli in 1989 to have 5 singles from a debut album peak in the top 5 of the Billboard Hot 100.
That's a crazy statistic.
It really is. If you were listening to the radio back then, you know every single one of these.
Yeah.
London Bridge, Fergalicious, Glamorous, Big Girls Don't Cry, and Clumsy.
What's fascinating here is, from a musical standpoint, how she achieved that sound. She didn't consider herself a rapper in the traditional sense.
Right.
She drew heavily from female hip-hop pioneers like Sultan Peepa and J.J. Fad, but she manipulated the rhythm and tone of the English language to craft her own unique sonic signature.
Yeah, she openly admitted that she purposely mispronounces words just to get the right instrumental sound. It's like she was using words as percussion instruments. She was playing the dictionary like a drum kit.
Exactly.
She would sacrifice proper English for the sake of the beat. Think about the irony there. Stacey Ann Ferguson started as a straight-A spelling bee champion, and she reaches the absolute pinnacle of pop culture by intentionally spelling things wrong in Fergalicious.
It is the ultimate act of reclaiming your own narrative. The child who was forced to be perfect finally realized that the real power was in bending the rules.
I love that. And while she is conquering the charts, she is quietly building an absolute business empire.
Oh, her business moves were incredibly smart.
She becomes a part owner of the Miami Dolphins NFL team. She launches a wildly successful footwear line called Fergalicious. She releases multiple fragrances with Avon.
The hustle is real.
Oh, and she even started a winery with her dad called Ferguson Crest, where the wines were literally named after her lyrics.
She took the immense cultural capital she built with her music and diversified it brilliantly. She proved she was just as savvy in the boardroom as she was in the recording booth.
And in her personal life, she was navigating major milestones, too. She is openly bisexual, framing it beautifully by saying her mom taught her every human is God's child and not to judge.
Right.
But she married actor Josh Duhamel, had a son named Axel, and even though they eventually divorced in 2019, she continued to build this rich, full life while using her massive platform for extensive philanthropy.
But, an enormous career spanning multiple decades isn't without its missteps.
Right, that's inevitable.
If you really want to understand Fergie's lasting legacy, you have to look at how she handles the moments when the chameleon's colors don't quite match the room.
Which brings us to the idea of the imperfect pop star. In 2018, she officially parted ways with the Black Eyed Peas. And that same year, she had a moment that practically broke the internet.
Oh boy, the national anthem.
Yes, she delivered a highly controversial, heavily panned rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner at the NBA All-Star Game.
It was certainly a memorable performance, but not for the reasons she hoped.
No, definitely not. She intended for it to be this slowed-down, jazzy rendition, but it just did not land. The internet had a field day mocking her.
They were brutal.
But look at what she did next. We see celebrities lash out at the sound guy or blame the acoustics all the time. She didn't do that. She gracefully released a statement admitting that she took a risk and, quote, Clearly, this rendition didn't strike the intended tone.
That kind of self-awareness and emotional maturity is incredibly rare in Hollywood.
It really is.
It shows you how far she had come from the child star who was terrified of making a mistake. She owned the failure, and because she owned it, it didn't destroy her. I mean, just a year prior, she had released her sophomore album, Double Duchess. Heavily inspired by her experiences with motherhood and looking up to her artists like Beyoncé, she just kept moving forward.
And you can see how her influence spans an entirely new generation. Fast forward to 2022. Rapper Jack Harlow samples her hit Glamorous for his song First Class, which goes straight to #1.
That was huge.
Yeah, that sample resulted in a 70% streaming bump for Fergie's original song. She even ended up coming out to perform it live with him at the MTV Video Music Awards.
It was this beautiful full-circle moment where the current hip-hop culture was bowing down to the foundation she basically helped build.
She's still finding ways to surprise people, too.
Yeah.
In 2025, she returned from a hiatus to film a reimagined music video for London Bridge for a Netflix series called Too Much. I love what she said about the experience. She stated she loved the idea of being a little bit messier, a little bit goofier, and just having fun with life.
That word messier is the key to everything we've discussed today.
How so?
Well, Catherine Gillespie wrote a retrospective on Fergie, calling her the imperfect pop star. She noted how Fergie rose above incredibly manufactured circumstances to establish a persona that wasn't afraid to be on the worst dressed list, as long as she was being authentically herself.
Right, because the public eventually tires of perfect manufactured stars.
Exactly. Perfection is brittle. It shatters the second it's dropped. But a star who is willing to experiment, who is willing to look a little goofy, and who owns her missteps with grace, that is a human being the audience can connect with over decades. Her messiness isn't a flaw, it's her signature.
Let's bring this all the way back to the beginning. Stacey Ann Ferguson started as a perfectly polished kid who believed she had to be flawless to be loved. She learned to suppress her actual feelings just to hit her marks on a soundstage. But she achieved her greatest success and attained true pop royalty status by breaking the rules of pronunciation, defying the music critics, and completely embracing her imperfections.
True longevity in pop culture isn't about never making a mistake. It's about the relentless courage to reinvent yourself.
Which leaves you with something to really think about. In an era where every modern young pop star's image is micromanaged on TikTok and Instagram from the time they are teenagers, are we accidentally engineering a whole new generation of perfect stars who will inevitably have to face their own messy rebellion?
That's a great question.
And when they do, will we give them the same grace to reinvent themselves that Fergie earned? Thanks for listening to PPL Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.